We are rolling. What's going on this morning, Tavis? How are you?
Doing well, my friend. Doing
Yes.
well. Hoping some of these offers are going to pay off and
Yeah.
we're going to have a full plate of projects.
We will
That's
be
what we're hoping
flipping to
for
our
at
heart's
least.
content. Yes, you've been doing a lot of work. We're going to get into a little bit more of those details later, kind of in a more of our dense real estate section towards the end or after the news. So stick around. Tavis is we're going to kind of dive a little deeper into some of the offers and what we're seeing and doing some comping, so a little bit of comping university because I'm constantly learning on that and even learned a little bit yesterday. So I think everyone could probably benefit from that conversation and getting better at comping houses and making bids. So we're going to dive some into that. And I think you want to stick around for that. But yeah, you've been busy making offers. I have a contract with a couple that's out for a condo. We've signed our part. We've all agreed verbally of the terms. And so we're just waiting for them to send back an executed contract and we can get our option period started and get the inspectors over there. So that will be fun. I'm glad this has been a journey with this couple from New Jersey. They've been wanting to do this midterm rental for medical professionals so they can rent it for 90 days. Usually 120 days is the medical contracts, 14 weeks or so, somewhere in there. And so they've been looking for something that would allow that. That's a good place. But we found a really, really good match. And specifically, they don't allow short-term rentals, but they do allow 90-day plus. It's in their
Good.
bylaws, 90
Oh,
day
90
plus.
day
So
plus.
yeah,
Okay.
90-day plus is in their HOA documents. And so,
Okay.
yeah, that was cool. It was a cool little condo unit, I think 21 buildings or so, but it was sandwiched in between this nice neighborhood.
What's the price
And
point?
they wanted 215 and we landed at 205.
Got it.
So I
That's
think it's a
cool.
good deal. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that should
think it's a
work
good
out.
deal. Yeah, the HOA
HOA fees
fees,
aren't too bad.
nope, 335, which is pretty normal. Some of them
Yep.
were way higher. There's not any of these pending backlogs of
Mm-hmm.
assessments that some of
Yep.
these other associations had. And one of the interesting things that I took a video of the property for this couple and did a tour. And one of the things I showed them that was pretty impressive is their trash area was really clean, and they had a new fence built around the trash area, and it's really organized. I was like, man, this is a good sign. It's kind of in the back of the property. To
Yeah.
me, it was kind of like, look, they're taking care of this. They want this to be okay. I really do feel like this, and their clubhouse looked really nice and clean. Everything just, it ticked all the boxes. And so I was just really hopeful that we could come to terms with this seller. And obviously 215 to 205 is not a huge hit, but I do think he's an investor as well. And he was trying to get as much out of it as possible. So it
Yeah.
took him a day to kind of come to terms with the fact that
Two bedroom, three bedroom.
2 bedroom, I think it's 2 bedroom, 2 bath with laundry. That was the other thing.
Oh
It's a
yeah,
two one.
a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
a
them
two
don't
one.
have built-in laundry.
Yeah, but they
Yeah.
had a built-in laundry that's an actual laundry room, not some squeezed-in old closet with a dinky little stacked up thing.
Yeah.
Everything looked normal, and they actually made a few renovations. It has a decent balcony. Like it's just nice. Like I think it'll be really cool, and it'll be nice and private, and the people that they want to rent to, I think, would love it, and they'll feel nice and secure. And it's really close to several hospitals, specifically Presby Dallas, and not too far
Nice.
from Big Baylor. So yeah, I think they're going to be happy. And so now, if we can just get through the option period and kind of get smoothly through that, I think we did 7 days, and so we got a few days to kind of figure things out and make sure everything's good to go there. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Well, you've had
And
your work cut out because
yes,
it's not, anybody out there listening, condo's got a lot of moving parts. And for this particular client, too, that's wanting to do it as an investment and midterm rental, you got a lot of research that goes into that. So not only are you checking bylaws and restrictions on each condo that you guys have an interest in looking at, but then you're running the calculations on numbers, figuring out what the HOA fees, like you said, making sure that there's not some kind of, um, you know, uh, there's another word for it, but assessment I think is correct. But basically, for you guys that don't know, HOAs have basically a controlling interest in the common grounds and exteriors of condominiums for the most part. Sometimes they include the roof, sometimes they don't.
Foundation,
But
a
what
lot of times
happens is
the
over
main
time,
systems.
deferred maintenance goes on. And then basically, and this could be in a high rise as well. We've seen this in a big renovation before where they're updating the building. And basically, they collect a certain amount of money from each, each unit or each member owner of the condominium, and therefore there may be an amount of an assessment per owner. It could be 5,000, could be 7,000, could be 10,000 per owner, and if they haven't paid that in all the way yet, then it's going to come out of the proceeds at the sale, or they can pass that cost on to the buyer depending on the negotiation of the deal. So
Yep.
it's important to look at that and see if there's anything outstanding like that. And sometimes they're in the middle of it, um, where they haven't made a decision yet, and so it's important to kind of dissect that as well. So
Yeah.
it can be quite tricky. And another problem you were running into is getting financial approval. And I just heard this last week. An agent called me in a panic, and I think it was about to turn into a major lawsuit. These were in McKinney, and very nice part of McKinney. The average price point of these condos were 600,000 plus,
Oh, wow.
and she had put it up on the market. They got an offer pretty quick, and basically, we're in the 11th hour, getting ready to close, and the lender pulled the plug, so we can't approve this because the um, basically the blanket insurance coverage policy is not a high enough replacement cost. So
Mm.
therefore, it doesn't fit our replacement cost requirements to lend on this property. So therefore, we can't lend money on this. So your only option is pay cash.
Mm.
And so she was freaking out, started calling some of the other people that were selling condos in there, and they happened to be cash sales. So that didn't really help the situation. But essentially, the HOA had decided, and there was some interest, I guess, from the HOA president, whatever, but they had decided that they were gonna um, just do a state your replacement cost. I forget what you call it, but it's like a stated policy. Like I have it on my commercial building, right? I can actually state the value versus
Hmm.
them giving me a replacement cost value that causes the insurance premium to go way up.
Hmm.
And so they had stated kind of whatever the replacement cost was, which was below what the requirement was.
Hmm.
And so essentially she contacted me and I'm like, this smells like a lawsuit. Like, and the seller was in a pickle. They had to sell this asset for whatever he had going on. And basically this whole thing got flagged. And I was like, here's an attorney. You need to call an attorney. I think you got a case here,
Hmm.
because if the HOA, based on their insurance requirements, is causing people not to be able to sell their property, to the mass majority of Fannie Mae or conventional financing,
Hmm.
um, and it has to be cash only because of what they changed the policy to be. Yeah, I
It's
think
gonna be
you've
a
got a
problem.
lawsuit here.
Yeah.
This is going to be a major issue. And so, anyways, they changed their tune, I think, as soon as they started hearing the ruffles. And I think another agent that had been selling property in that location had a deal blowing up for the same exact reason. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we got more than one. We got a problem here.
Right.
So I think it got worked out. But anyways, there's a lot of moving parts, and
There's a
and
lot of moving
and
parts.
this brings up a good point of what agents do, especially buyers agents, because I guarantee you the listing agent on this condo did not lay this all out on a silver platter for you. When you're negotiating for your client and trying to do all this research on behalf of your client, um,
I will
to
say
buy
this one
this
actually did
condo.
a good job.
Oh,
The
did they?
other ones,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of the other ones don't though. You have to dig.
A lot of them don't, and
Yeah.
there's all this controversy about buyers agents don't earn their commission. So my
Right.
point to that is, this is a small deal. You're
Yeah.
talking 3% on $200,000 is $6,000 gross. Then you split that back with your broker that you're a part
Hmm.
of, and depending on how you're structured with the broker, what your split is, what your cap is, all of that, you're not seeing a lot of that income that's coming back into your pocket, right?
Yeah.
So it's important for you guys to understand out there that sometimes these things are very complicated, and you have to be a professional in your field and know where to find the information and know that these different red flags that can come up, because you want this client for life too, right? You want to do multiple deals with this guy.
Right.
So you would hate for him to be able to buy this property and then all of a sudden learn some of these things as he's in the property, with the restrictions, number one being that there's a deed restriction and they're saying
Yeah.
90-day plus. Um, that's one of the biggest ones, right?
Well, one of the best things
But
that they did was give us all the HOA documents, which sometimes takes a while, but they
yeah,
had
it
all the
does.
bylaws and
Yeah,
all that stuff already in a document that they could send us. And so they got to read through 45 pages of that before they even really wanted to make an offer.
sure.
And that she forwarded the HOA president contact to call and ask any other questions. And so, I mean,
Good
she
deal.
did go above and beyond. And I also think she knew what she had. And it's like, look, this is a good property. We want to sell it. We're not trying to hide anything. Here, call this person. Here's the documents. Now, a lot of the other ones that we were trying to go, kind of skim through, they were a lot harder to figure out. And you get to the second level of questions and you're like, oh, actually, no. Well, let me check on that. And it takes 2 or 3 days. And like, yeah, I haven't heard back. I'm not really sure that that counts here. So it was always that. So this
Yeah,
this agent has done a good job in it. It paid off for her and it's paying off for me because I could go through and get the answers for my clients and just say, look, I want y'all to be comfortable making an offer here. Let's look through all this, ask your
yeah.
questions, and then we can move forward. And now we're going
Well,
into inspection phase, and I'm sure
and,
stuff will come up, but
and since we're talking about this specifically, just for our listeners out there that don't understand how condo associations work and how HOA fees work, you mentioned earlier the HOAs are like 300 and something dollars a month, and that's
mm-hmm.
pretty average. You probably hear people that are kind of freaking out, right? Like 300 something dollars a month in HOA fees. That's crazy, right? That's $3,600 a year. But what they may not understand is that with a condo, when you have hazard insurance, the hazard insurance basically covers the condominium inside the wall, so it covers your interior contents. Basically, if you have an interior flood, or something like that, or you have an issue inside the unit, but that cost is relatively less expensive compared to covering the exterior of the structure. And so the blanket coverage is part of that insurance policy that we were mentioning a few minutes ago, that the insurance or the HOA has to decide on and make a decision to cover the exterior structures of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is part of your HOA fees, that's including in that. Another part of HOA fees may include, trash service and
Yeah,
lawn
maintenance of the
maintenance
grounds and the clubhouse and
and
the pool and
yep, common areas and things like that. So in some cases, you might see HOA fees up to $1,000 a month, and people really freak out when they see that, right? But those could include utilities. Those can include valet service, concierge service.
yeah, guard
Um,
gate, something like that.
yeah, a lot of different things like that. A lot of these older like high rise condominiums include either your utilities and your water and things like that inside of that HOA fee because of how the building's designed. They're designed like hotels, right, with
Yeah,
water
right.
chillers and big
Mm-hmm.
broiler systems and things like that. So,
Yeah,
anyways, it's important to kind of understand the
it's a
dynamic
different
and
world for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely different. I'm glad that we've gone through this and we've come out on the other side. And I knew a good bit of this, but I've learned some things too and different questions to ask specifically from the financing side. They're using a DSCR loan, but they use similar underwriting standards as FHA. And so we were basically looking for something that would qualify for FHA. And if so, then this DSCR company was going to be good with it. So that really started filtering out a lot of these. But yeah, glad we're on the other side. And hey, I'm not going to complain about a commission check,
yeah.
and it's nice to get that one under the
And
belt. And
Ashton, explain what a DSCR loan is.
yeah, so debt service coverage ratio loan is a specific type of investment loan. Typically, It's kind of a blend of a traditional loan and a hard money loan. Hard money, we've talked about before, they don't particularly care where you get the money to secure the loan. They just want to make sure that the investment is a good investment. And so you go to a traditional bank like Tavis uses all the time. They ask all sorts of questions. They want to see your financial statements, your tax statements, who's giving you the down payment for this. He can't just show up all of a sudden, get a deposit for 30 grand out of the blue and then them be cool with it. They're going to want to know, like, where is this coming from? Hard money, they don't care typically. And then DSCR is kind of along those lines. They're looking at the performance of the property. So debt service coverage ratio is a ratio of, they're going to look at how much the rent will be projected to be, or it's historically been for that property. And then they look at that versus what the mortgage will be. And as long as it can cover the mortgage plus a little bit, they want that ratio. Every company is different. They might want a 0.7 or a 1.2 or a 1.5, but roughly 1 to 1.2, I think, is fairly standard. If you can get that ratio to cover your mortgage, then they're going to be fine with it because they know you're going to be able to pay your debt, you're going to service the debt. It's going to be covered by the rent that's coming in. And so they have different ways of underwriting that, looking at history. Sometimes they can use AirDNA, certain websites to look at, let's say if it's a short-term rental or something like that, they can look at projections to say, well, this should rent for this, it should net this much a year, we can loan you this much money. So that's kind of the mechanics of it. It's just not your traditional loan. It's looking more of a performance. And that being said, your rates are going to be a little bit higher because it is a little bit riskier. It's not quite as much underwriting. It does seem like those rates do go up, although they're still decent rates. I mean, I think they're going to probably get something in the 8, low 8, high 7, something like that. So yeah, that's debt service coverage ratio loan. And not everybody does them. There's special shops out there. So if you call your mortgage person, typically a lot of times they won't actually underwrite it, but they can give you to someone who does. So well, cool. There's a little real estate education right there. We've been waxing poetic for 17 minutes now on DSCR and condos. So let's touch a little bit about the market update. So in DFW, the news, Dallas Morning News last week said that Dallas has had a 3.5% increase in price of home prices year over year, which is lagging the national average. And I thought, man, that sounds kind of odd. So I went and looked at my numbers, and we said last week, and I looked again this year over year, our whole MLS is down. Last week, it was down roughly 1.5%. This week, it's showing 0.5%. But then when I looked at actual just Dallas County was showing a 2.8% increase. So I'm thinking that story is looking at either just Dallas proper or Dallas County, which does seem to be showing a little bit of an increase. But then when you look at the outlying counties and towns, specifically Collin County showed a decent drop. I think it was in the 3% drop. So it's all averaging out. Our whole MLS is down slightly, even though the news is showing a little bit of an increase. So that's one of those things you kind of dig in, kind of see exactly what they're talking about. In one article, they'll say that prices are going up in Dallas, and in another article, they're freaking out because everyone's leaving Dallas. And so it's not like, oh, wow, it's great, let's invest in Dallas. Like, no, a lot of people are kind of leaving and going other places. But in general, the other thing is our days on market and our inventory. Inventory has been hovering around 3.2 months. And for whatever reason, we had quite the jump in that statistic this week, and it's showing 3.9 months of inventory. And this follows the trend of things are just stacking up. Interest rates are hovering. They're right around 7.99%, right around 8%. So interest rates are hovering at a pretty high rate. There's really no relief imminent. That it looks like it's going to be coming through. The economy's still doing okay. All these things we've been talking about. And inventory is just slowly stacking up. And there's just not as much flying off the shelves. Also, I think there was a little bit of a run up in new build starts for a while, and a lot of neighborhoods are still going. So those are coming online. So we will see. We will see how it stacks up. I think you might be able, typically when this starts happening, builders will really start throwing you some incentives. So we've talked about that before. But whenever inventory starts stacking and they went all out for a little while and they started building streets at a time, really look for some of those. They're going to be throwing in closing costs and some blinds and refrigerators and all sorts of stuff. So if you know someone, and from an investment standpoint, a lot of these builders are becoming more investor friendly, especially if they have inventory just sitting there. You might want to check it out. That being said, we've talked about Princeton specifically is a huge new build area with cheaper homes. Looks really attractive. Greenville, those are the things you kind of want to be questioning slightly. I had another investor look up in Anna the other day, and he was a little alarmed by how many rentals were listed on the market that were, active listings for rentals, trying to figure out, okay, is it flooded? Is it saturated? What's going on here? We've talked about how Princeton might be that right now, where it's just a lot of investors went there, bought some new builds. Now they're online. We will see how that flushes out. Long term, I think that corridor all the way up from McKinney to Sherman to Denison to Lake Texoma is a great place to look. And I've told several people to check that out. You got the semiconductors going into Sherman. You've got $5 billion of development going into Lake Texoma. And so I think from a long-term appreciation and being a place that you might want to consider, I think it's an amazing place to look. But the actual market right now over there, you just need to make sure that you're not getting into a neighborhood that already has 15 rentals online that are, who is going to come in now. Whenever they start building the semiconductors and all that, that might bring in this flood of people who need places, and you might have to float it for a while. So there is the market update. Be careful on the days on market. You were floating up there on 40-ish days. I think this condo was 45 days. This condo actually was funny. It fell in line with a lot of these statistics. Our final offer close price is going to be about 96-97% of original asking, which is what the numbers say it should be. Days on market, mid 40s. That's pretty close for certain areas. So it's actually fallen right in line with what we're looking at there. All right, let's talk about a little bit of news. So a couple stories that popped out for us up in Frisco. There is a thing called Frisco Station, which it's another development. It's another $3 million square feet of commercial space and retail space that's going in just north of the Star there in Frisco. So if you go on the tollway, Dallas North Tollway going north, and you cross over 121, you're going to hit the Star, which is where the Dallas Cowboys practice and their headquarters is. And there's all sorts of cool hotels and restaurants right there. We were over there the other night eating at Connie Rosso. And there's a good place to go grab dinner. There's a bunch of good places right through there. D. Lincoln Prime, good place for steak. And right north of there is a place they're calling Frisco Station. There's going to be 3 million square feet of retail and commercial. Another 450-bed hotel will be going in there. At one point, this little stretch, they called it the $5 billion mile. It was going to include, I'm sure, Legacy, then the Star, then Wade Park, which is a so far defunct, not come to fruition, huge development there on the east side of the tollway. It's a huge hole in the ground with concrete and hopes and dreams in the way of crumbling brick right now. That used to be a Whole Foods. It's supposed to be a Whole Foods store, and it's just sitting there. And but then they have this Frisco Station. And then north of there, I think the Gates of Prosper and all that's going in. So a huge stretch of development, $5 billion supposedly right through there. Pretty amazing. And so that'll be fun to see. And you were just saying the other day, Tavis, we need a few more restaurants to go try out and spend our money at. So here soon, Frisco Station will be something we'll have to go check out. So have you spent much time at the Star? Is that one of y'all's places?
We've been there a few times. It's not something I normally frequent. The D Lincoln's okay. It's a little too. I don't know. I don't know what the word is. I mean, food was okay. I've been up there a few times in the cigar lounge, and the cigar lounge is cool.
Yeah. Well, Neighborhood Services is there, and Neighborhood Services is a really good restaurant, but the original one is better. But that one's there at the Omni, and that's a good restaurant. And then they have a couple. There's a good brunch place there, City Works. I think that's kind of a sports bar. Had a good brunch. Connie Rosso voted #1 pizza in Dallas at one point. Started down in Deep Ellum. It actually started as a food truck, I believe, and then they opened up Deep Ellum. and it's really good pizza. Although the one the other night a bit soggy. I'm just gonna be honest. Then they've got all sorts of other restaurants. Tupelo Honey is really good right there. So I have spent way too much money eating over there, and the Star is really cool. What's really another nice thing about the Star is they have the practice facility right there, and that's actually where Luke and the Hebron Hawks will be graduating this year. Is the Star? Is that where Landon's graduating to?
I
You know where it is?
I don't know yet,
Yeah, I know they're
actually.
doing a bunch that weekend. I mean, they're just cycling them through. I mean, a
It
bunch.
might
So
be.
yeah,
I can't remember. I should know that. It's coming up.
several years Hebron
Cowboys.
graduated over at the campus of UNT. This year it's going to be at the Star, so
Yep.
that's going to be really cool. They have a huge pro
I
shop
think
for
it
the
is at the
Cowboys.
Star. But
Yeah,
I mean, if Louisville ISD is doing it for your son, then I would
yeah,
imagine so.
y'all
So
got it. Yeah,
that
yeah, it'll be cool.
should be
It'll be
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in there. I don't know, once or twice for random things. It's a neat facility, and then they've got the big pro shop right there. So Frisco, we were looking at Jeff Cheney as the mayor in Frisco. I would love to get him on as an interview. I sat in a presentation when they were talking about the new PGA, all the development up there, and just all the plans. And he's done an amazing job as a mayor. He actually is a real estate broker, real estate agent, owns the Cheney Group for Monument Realty. So he has a real mind for real estate, and the developments that they've brought to Frisco, I think since he's been mayor, include the Star. Now, Wade Park was on the way, and then you've got the Frisco Station. You've got the new PGA headquarters, which is coming with just thousands of homes and all sorts of different developments and restaurants up there. And now Universal Studios is bringing in their kids theme park up there. And so, man,
Oh
that
wow.
guy, he will go down in the history of Frisco as one of the better mayors, I would think, because he is really, really brought that place some huge developments in business. So I would love to talk to him. When I was hearing him speak not long ago, real personable guy, seems super quick, and so he would fit in great with us. So
Sure.
personable and super quick. Um, so yeah, would love to see that. The other news that sort of caught my eye, the Dallas Wings, which is the WNBA team. I'm not a Dallas Wings fan necessarily, but we are Mavericks fans, and Tavis was and Tabitha were generous enough to invite me to my first Mavericks playoff game last Friday. It was amazing. But the Dallas Wings, they are relocating from Arlington to downtown Dallas, and not only downtown Dallas, but to the Kay Bailey Hutchison Center. There's an arena there, the Dallas Memorial Auditorium, I think is what it's called. And the Kay Bailey is going through a $3 billion renovation. We have spent hours at Kay Bailey for various reasons. We go down. I would say go down there a couple times a year for different things. We've played a lot of volleyball there. The Dallas Safari Club conventions down there. It's amazing. The Mikamoto auction's always there. We go down there once a year for that. So I've spent a lot of time at Kay Bailey, and it's going through a huge renovation. And part of that, I'm sure, is going to go towards this new stadium for the WNBA team for Dallas. And one of the complaints for Dallas is the fact that they don't have, their baseball team is in Arlington, their football team's in Arlington, but the Mavs and the hockey team are downtown. It would be nice to have a little bit more of a sports environment down there. If everything was down there, it'd be amazing. So the Wings will go down there. I don't know that you will make your way to the. Are you going to get season tickets to the Dallas Wings, or is there a 2-for-1 package with the Mavericks and the Wings that they've offered you?
Right. No, I think that we'll see what happens with women's basketball. I think it's definitely picked up more publicity lately, especially with the girl out of
Caitlin
Iowa.
Clark.
Yeah. So
Yep, her
we'll
first
see
professional game is going to be here in Dallas this
we'll
Friday.
see what happens. It is unfortunate. You see all the controversy out there, comparing salaries and stuff like that with her, but
It's not much comparison.
it's
I mean,
well, it's not, and I don't. Unfortunately, as unfair as it is, which it is unfair,
what's
um,
economics?
it's economics. I mean, it just doesn't create the same amount of demand. You know what I mean? Like but I mean, if you think about it in different reverse, women's beach volleyball is going to make a lot more money than guys volleyball, right?
Yeah,
Like It's just it's the entertainment. Who's watching it?
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to. Is just when you look at multi-billion-dollar you know franchises that exist in the NBA and have for you know decades on decades.
Yeah.
It's just that's what it is, right? And,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate. Maybe that'll change. Maybe the women's basketball will pick up momentum. Um,
Well, and
you
it's
know,
honestly this ties into what we do. There's subsidies and there's economics and then there's subsidies. And so if part of the government or there's movement to say, hey, we really want to try to put this into the public eye, we really want to try to bring this project to fruition, then government can say, look, we're going to subsidize this. And so this happens a lot in real estate, actually. So
yeah.
you have affordable housing. A lot of developers aren't going to look necessarily to do affordable housing because the returns may not be what they need them to be, but governments think it's important and they want to try to incentivize that type of development. So they say, well, we'll give you some tax breaks here, we'll help you here, we'll give you a grant, and then it makes it worth it. It's not because it was just this amazing financial decision in the first place, but they figure out how to make it come to fruition. And so that's really what has happened with the WNBA. It's been subsidized for a long time. And I'm sure the city has given them some incentives to come downtown. But hey, if they can do that and then it gets in the public eye and then people are aware that it's a good product and it starts to take off, good for them, and I think it would be, if nothing else, it's another decent, not too expensive option to go do something on a Friday night. Because
Hmm.
if you just want to go hang out with your family and have something to do, and it's between dropping several $100s to go anywhere else, especially the Cowboys but I'm sure, the Mavericks and hockey, and you guys spend a lot of money on your season tickets and parking and all that stuff. If you can go down the street and go watch some decent basketball and have a good time with your family, then I bet there's a market for that. So, but yeah, it really does play into what we do. And we'll go ahead and transition into our real estate talk a little bit because you know when you're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole just because you think it should work, it's not going to work out. You're going to beat your head against the wall, you're going to be frustrated, and that especially with flipping. I'm sure with scraping and developing it has, but especially with flipping, I find myself falling into this trap, and you're very disciplined about this. But when you really want a deal to happen, you really start squinting and being like, yeah, I think this would be good. Yeah, that comp, yeah, I could see how that would be a good comp. And you start looking at stuff that may or may not be a great way to look at something. And you kind of just want to get into a project, you want it to work out, but you have to be super disciplined to your principles and what works, so you don't get in over your skis and get on a project that's just doomed from the start. And so yesterday was a good example. Tavis and I went and looked at a house up in the Colony, and it's an interesting house in a few ways, and I think this will be applicable to a lot of people when you're comping. This was in a place in the Colony called Stewart Peninsula. Stewart Peninsula is cool because there are parts of it that are actually, it is on a peninsula and it does overlook Lake Louisville. There's also a few of the houses that back up to a golf course. So when you're comping, all of these factors really play in. Not to mention that part of the peninsula is really close to a main road. So when you start looking at a fairly small area and you're pulling comps, it might look like, well, one sold down the street. It actually has the same street name. It's on Stewart. This one sold for 550. This one, blah, blah, blah. So I pulled comps, sent them to Tavis. This should, our buy price should be around here. Well, when he started doing research, he's like, I'm just not seeing that. And we need to make sure that this isn't a Lakeview project or a property. We need to make sure that this isn't this. So we really started backing in, and then our number really started whittling down from there. And then when we went and walked it, it was all the bedrooms were upstairs, another red flag, and it had some foundation issues, which is a question mark. So Tavis, talk through kind of your process of that comp there, and just some of I know we've talked a lot about comping. And then the
Yeah.
other thing that you brought up was the price per square foot, which to hear come from you was, almost heresy. But talk about, it made sense once you explained it. So talk about that comp, talk about why price per square foot mattered at that house and how we backed into the number that we threw out there.
Yeah, and it's one that, so you ran comps, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I ran comps on it again yesterday. And one of the things I noticed, and I pay attention, I typically start with a half-mile radius and then go out from there. So I started with a half-mile radius. Sure enough, I know the pocket, and you've got lake frontage and lake view over there. This is a pocket in the colony called Stewart Peninsula. And anyways, once I pulled that up, I started looking. I'm like, oh, a couple of these have lake views, or lakefront property, and some of them are bigger. And so that's one of the big things I try to do is narrow it down to get it closer to the subject property. But immediately, it's just like dealing with a home and a golf course. If you've got a golf course lot, you immediately need to toss it out, right? Because it's not going to, the dollar per foot, all the different value indicators, and what it sold for is not going to be a fair estimate if you're comparing it, when apples to apples. So, for instance, if I ran a comp and I left some of those comps in there, the higher price points would shoestring the value up. So therefore, it would kick out a value closer to kind of what you had originally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that you went in there and actually unclicked those different lots that had that. And so that's part of
Right.
the reason we had a variance in value. And it wasn't a tremendous amount. I mean, I was kind of going into this thinking I was lowering my value about 25,000 from where you were. And then once we got there, we walked it and all bedrooms are up. So mind you, it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but what you have to pay attention to is comparables. And
Mm-hmm.
so the desirability factor is master down, right? Or primary suite down. And that just happens to be the case here in our area in DFW in Texas. When homes started being built that way, people that live in their home for a long time or older, etc., are like, it's much more convenient to have your primary suite on the same level as your kitchen and things like that. Now, in some cases, some people may push back because they got a little kid or a brand new baby and they want to be on the same floor. So it still works to have all bedrooms up. It just,
Mm.
in an evaluation point, there is stress that comes along with, um, there's a benefactor if the master suite is down, right, or the
Yeah.
primary suite is down. And so when it's not down, then you have to try to find other comps to support the demand. And so that's where I went back and I had to start looking at comparables in the numbers that I already started with. And most of the comparables that I had, the primary suite was down. So I know based on that value indicator that I needed to drop it. So in this subject situation, um, Ashton was at like 550. I was at 525 before we went and looked at it. Once I evaluated yesterday after walking it, realizing that all bedrooms were up. Another thing that they did is they customized this floor plan. These are the original owners, and they customized the floor plan to meet their needs when they moved into it. So it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of odd. It had two half baths down, and then all the rest of the full baths were up. And so even though it had like an office or study down, it really couldn't be used as a full, as a bedroom
Bedroom
because it wasn't a full
without major
bathroom.
renovation.
It wasn't yeah, without major, in which it doesn't qualify and make sense, right? This was a
Yeah.
90s build home. It just doesn't fit that buck. Um, anyways, it um, in comparison, that floor plan was just a little goofy. Like the family room was more in the front of the home versus the back of the home where the backyard
Mm-hmm.
was. So there was a couple different layout things, but I think ultimately feel pretty confident in a renovation of what it could be. And so I dropped it down to basically 495, to be safe. And so I did that because of these different things that you can't change, right? We can't change that the primary suite's up and things like that. And so that was one of the big things. But one of the things I had told Ashton is when I ran the numbers at 550, one of the indicators that I did look at was dollar per foot. And the reason I look at that is that the consumer market and most agents out there do look at dollar per foot as a value indicator. And so when they see a number that's extremely higher, dollar per foot, they immediately think it's priced too high, right?
Yep.
Even if the average price point is $550,000, but your dollar per foot is so much higher. So in this case, it was going to be like $250 a foot, I think, and the average over there was like 207, 208.
Yeah, you were
Well,
going to be at
even at five and a
214,
quarter, I think it was like
226. Yeah.
226, and I
Yeah.
could get on board with that, a fully renovated home in comparison, because a lot of the homes weren't fully renovated. They were just, lived in, maybe updates over the years, but nothing crazy. But something that you're jumping up $40, $50 a foot to really push it, without any kind of, lake lot or any kind of lot amenity. You can sometimes get there if it's like a golf course lot, or if it backs up to the lake or something like that. You might have that big of a jump in the dollar per foot. But it's important just to look at that indicator to see how you're going to measure up. So that's the other reason I did that, and so that's why I dropped it from the 550 to the 525. And so, you know, here's the thing that I'm running into right now, and it's frustrating because obviously I'm competing, right? And situations where somebody wants a higher, more net money, which is a lot of cases, that the seller's selling it as is, but they want as much as they can get out of the estate. And I'm competing with other investors. It's hard to unknow the things that I know, and so it's hard to unknow like real budgets, And when I write my budget at $60,000 and I come in at $80,000, then I have to be very careful when I'm looking at this property to go, hey, I'm probably going to spend $80,000. Here's the things that are going to cause things to go up, right? The HVAC system, even though he says 5 or 6 years old, go outside, it doesn't look 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
The stickers were
That was
pretty
a rough
faded.
5 or 6 years, if that was the case.
And then the huge indicator that they don't maintain their stuff is the whole back door was completely rust colored. Like
Yep.
from the secondary drain lines were up in the second floor, and the whole back door was rust colored. Like it'd been
Just
leaking
dripping
for a
down from the
very long time.
The overflow from the drip pan had just been
Yeah.
dripping out the back of the house for a long time.
There was a tremendous amount of wood rot on this house, and siding that needed to be redone. There was just a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of things that people don't necessarily see. And the other weird thing was that the whole entire house was kind of tilted forward. It wasn't a lot of, individual cracks and things like that you could see. And it might be something that an engineer signs off on, but you didn't really notice it as much on the first floor, but you get up to the second floor just based on, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Gravity, maybe, or
Center of gravity. You're like higher.
yeah,
so
your
it
center
just,
of gravity, right? You're
yeah,
up higher, and like all the doors upstairs were swinging,
closing automatically. You
Yeah,
open up the door, here it goes closing shut again pretty quickly.
yeah, physics. I
It
was
was
looking for
not
the word physics. Yes,
physics.
the physics of being taller and the elevation caused the slope to be more dominant, more prominent, if you will.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of things in it, but it was frustrating because I felt like, man, this is a good one. This is down the street from Ashton. Like, this would be a great one to get into. And, I think ultimately we're competing against some wholesalers. And I say that because they put option periods on there. And after I would typically walk a home like this, um, I was going to go ahead and write it with no option period because I'd already walked it. I already kind of know what I'm getting into. And I look at the numbers, and I look at probably the comparison of what we lost this to, and I'm like, man, it's hard to make that up, right?
Yeah.
And
Because
whether
the agent said they got offers at what, 370, 380, and you
yeah,
came in at 325.
I think I needed to be so we're like 50,000 apart. So if you take 20K away from my rehab budget, and so you take that away, and you say, okay, let's buy it with a $60,000 reno instead of 80,000. And then instead of making a $50,000 profit, now you're going to make a $30,000 profit, and then you can make up that deficit. You can make that at work. And then I guess we're more competitive at that point. But the minute that you put that 60,000 budget becomes $80,000 budget. Now
Yeah.
your profit margin
10,000.
just went to 10.
Yeah.
So,
You're doing a lot of
no
work for
thanks.
$10,000. Yeah. Yeah.
No thanks. Right.
Yeah.
And again, what they were probably doing is, one, they were bumping up the numbers. The most likely they're using comps in the neighborhood that there were some comps over there supported $600,000, $700,000. And so it's easy to use those comps and say, hey, yeah, it's 500, 600 square feet bigger, but it sold for $100,000 more. And so you should be able to get mid fives for this house, no problem,
Hmm.
without knowing the things that we know and looking at the things that we just talked about.
Well, and they could
It's
also beat them up. It's called retrading. So whenever you put
sure.
something under option, and then sort of get a decent number just to put it under contract, knowing that you're going to bring in your inspector, your engineer, whatever, find $30,000 worth of foundation issues or whatever, and then go back and say, well, we need this, and then they're getting close to what you probably threw out there to begin with, but they've already kind of started the process, and they've kind of married the deal a little bit. And so that's also an option
Yeah.
that they did, or they put it under option as a wholesaler and they go try to shop it for a week and they don't get
Well,
takers and then
that's
it
what it
falls
sounds
out.
like to me. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like to me that that's the case on this particular deal, that we're competing against that. And look, I mean, I've wholesaled, so I get it. And I do wholesale, right? Still, but again, it's knowing all these different factors. It's frustrating. I mean, we're in a market where opportunities are less than what they have been over the last couple of
Hmm.
years, and so the people that are still in the game that are trying to get a deal done are just trying to make anything stick. And it's just,
Yeah.
when I see something like this and I know that there's just going to be those hidden things every time we turn around, on the surface, it looks like, oh, it's just a easy cosmetic flip. They're probably running $20, $25 a foot, to figure it out. There's also a tremendous amount of wholesalers out there that have never flipped a house before. So they really don't know. They have their indicators, they know their strike prices, they know their audience of their buyer, of what buyers will buy, and that's what they kind of base it off of. But they've never really flipped a home, so they really don't know what things cost. And so they don't know. They don't know to
Yeah.
look for some of these things that we know are going to eat up time and effort and energy when it comes into, working with that outside siding that you can't find anymore. You can't replace it. So you've got to do your best to try to work with what you have and patch it, or you're ripping it off and redoing it, which is going to be extremely expensive
Yeah.
and time consuming. And so there's a lot of different things that I know because I've done it, that you know it comes back to those restrictions that you talked about before. The excitement
Yep.
of doing the deal
Hmm.
sometimes will distract you to just say, let's do it. And then on the other hand, sometimes you do just have to pull the plug and just take the leap. um, I was talking to another agent yesterday, and her objection to me when I was trying to go through the math with her was, hey, did you see this property that you were only willing to pay, I think I got outbid by 13 grand. And so she says, go look this up. Did you go see it? Did you see what they sold it for? In kind of comparison, just saying, hey, look, you missed out on this deal because you wanted it too low. And I went and looked at it, and they did a good job, and they moved it quick. But I was looking at this particular property, and I think you might have looked at this back in the day as well. The pool was vacant, and I was almost pretty sure that the pool had a lot of pipes that were probably broken. And so I was thinking we're going to have to probably demo the pool. It looked like they were able to salvage the pool and renovate it.
Mm.
And then, based on the age of the home, I figured that the plumbing probably needed to be replaced. It's a good possibility that the people that renovated it, flipped it, did not even test the plumbing.
Mm.
Excuse me. And so, um, they you never know. I mean, and when I look at it, they were able to get a higher number than what my safety net was, which is helpful. And they did a great job on the cosmetics and the renovation of it. But that $13,000, sometimes you have to, just there's some wild cards in there, you
Yeah,
know,
it all went right for them, but it could have easily gone the other way, and you end up having to spend 15, 20 grand demoing the pool out, and then 25 grand doing the plumbing, and there you go. So
exactly.
yeah.
So those are just things that you have to be aware and you have to be okay on. And
But the
you
good
know,
news is your volume seems to have picked up. Like with agents calling you, you seem to be underwriting a lot
leads,
of
yes,
deals.
leads have picked up. I'm bidding
Yeah,
on, you know, lately the last couple of weeks has been about four to five, bids a week.
yeah,
So it's been pretty good. You know, I wish I had kind of back in the day, I could say I'd look at 20 to 1, right? Or
yeah,
15 to 1. And this market's been so crazy the last couple of years. I can't tell you that right now.
yeah.
So I can't give it enough of an indicator of how many it takes to get one deal right now. It's
Well, as
probably
inventory
closer to
stacks up and people
30 or
get
40.
nervous, and yeah,
Yeah.
well, the inventory is going to keep stacking up, and people have to move. People, like we've talked about before, death, divorce, job movement, whatever it is, they've got to go. It's not MLS appropriate. They don't want to do a bunch of repairs. They don't want to, clean up the house, whatever it is. These are the people that need help, and it's not that you're going in and beating them up. You're providing a solution for them so they can
Yeah.
move on with their life. And the thing is, there's a lot of people out there that over let's say the last 5 years learned how to flip, want to flip. They're still kind of in the market, and they're out there trying to do work. And then you have some people like Mark Fuller who have full-time crews that they just need to keep them busy. So there might be other guys out there too. It's like, look, I just need to get my guys busy, even if I'm not killing it on this. I've got some guys I just need to put on a job. I'm
Yeah.
sure we're competing against some of those people. So it's just it's an interesting market, but at least you are getting uh, at bats. You're getting swings, and at some point we'll pick something up. And you got the
Yeah.
flip over there
I
in
mean, it's
Carrollton,
good that
so
you
you got
bring
some
up
work to do.
you
But
bring up Mark Fuller because I think him and I are on the same page a lot when we talk about numbers. And when I talked to him, I was looking at a pocket that I know he does a lot of recently, and so I was calling him because a couple of his properties came up as comps. And I mean, we're talking apples to apples because he's in it, he's flipping it, he
mm-hmm,
knows what it is. It's like we're on the same page.
yeah,
There's not that huge diversity of, hey, you say it's going to take 90,000 and I'm saying it's going to take 50,000. Like
right.
there,
Y'all
that
are
number,
similar.
yeah, we're very similar. He might say 90 and I might say 85, or he
Yeah,
might say 80 and I say 100. It just kind of depends, but we're close, right?
yeah,
It's not this huge controversy that we're running into with other people that don't necessarily, you know, get their hands dirty, if you will.
yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. I mean, this agent I was talking to yesterday, her argument was, hey, if you do a really good job, it's been known that if you do a really good job and you know what you're doing, you can sell it higher than what other comps sell for, and push value. And yes, that is true. I mean, a lot of my properties, my average days on market for the last 10 plus years has been like 3 or 4, I think, days on market when it goes to market. And that comes down to what you're doing as far as finish out. That comes down to pricing it right, as we talk about with comps and things like that. Um, I've had a couple that sit longer, but the average is literally less than a week, right? So, but the issue is you have to know, you have to learn from the ones that have kicked you hard, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and Ashton, you've done 4, but your ratio is,
Two
and
kicked me
actually you
hard.
did good on Mapleton. You did good as far
Yeah,
as the actual end product and what you got, and you actually were in the
yeah,
green, you were in the profit. But what you have to look at is you have to learn from your mistakes, and you have to go
yeah,
back and look and go, what did I learn on this one? And because I've learned these things over the years, I've definitely done a really good job on a really good property and didn't move it or
mm-hmm.
had things out of my control, whether it was market issues, whether it was a location issue, et cetera, that has caused us not to sell it, regardless of what we did to the house,
Yeah,
regardless of how pretty we made it, or if we added another bathroom or not, like all of these different things. You can spend all kinds of stupid money on a house and not get your number. There's
mm-hmm.
plenty of flippers out there that'll tell you the same story, that thought that they were doing the right thing, and they thought by doing these improvements they were going to be able to get this crazy number, but that's
Well, I
not the
think
way
you
it
in general,
works.
you underwrite singles and doubles, and if everything goes well and the market treats you nice, you get a home run. But you're
Yep,
going to underwrite singles and doubles. You're not going to underwrite booking on a home run and then it fall apart. Trying if we do X,
correct.
Y, and Z, it's going to kill it. Like you're going for those very predictable singles and doubles that for sure are going to go through, and it's served you well. I'm sure you could have made more money overall if you were comfortable pushing the price a little bit and your average days on market were closer to 14 or 20, but I got top dollar. Like, I'm sure there's things you could do, but like we've talked about before, stress is real, and your lifestyle and all that stuff is real. Trying to move money, trying to churn it over and over is real. And so you
Yep.
have to take all those things into account.
Well,
So
another big
you've done
thing
it.
I'll say is when you're an agent and you do a price reduction, right? You take a listing and you're like, hey, let's put it out there and let's see, right? In a lot of cases, somebody might have lived in the home for a couple of years, so they're reaping the benefits of the equity gain, and they might, let's say they price a home at, you know, at maybe they do the 550. Let's just say they put it out there at 550, right? And they're like, "Oh, it's fine. Let's see if it moves." Well, it doesn't move. You don't get traffic, and you have to price. You do a price reduction on it. Maybe they do 10 grand, 540. Doesn't change anything. Usually, $10,000 price reduction is not going to do much because people will normally, write an offer at 10% under if it's been sitting on a while or whatever. So let's just say that you drop it 25 grand. Okay. And then you have to drop it another 25 grand. Well, there's a 50,000 margin. Well, on the listing, that may not matter to you too much as a consumer listing it, trying to get what you can. That may not hurt you bad. If you're an investor and you're betting on that 550 number and that's how you bought the deal and you got to take a reduction of 25 grand, that's a freaking huge hit, right?
Yeah.
Like those numbers are real, like real
Yeah.
fast, and they are scary
Yeah.
when you're in that situation and you have to do price reductions to sell your flip. Like it is not a good place to be,
Right.
and it
Very
does not feel
stressful.
good, and it eats your margin real quick. And not to mention all the soft costs, right? I consider your interest payments and your utility payments and all these different things that are part of your soft costs, right? They're kind of my business expense. I don't really necessarily calculate that into my specific flip deal like Ashton has in the past. Um, but that's because I have a full blown business operation that's running multiple projects at one time. So those are kind of those soft costs, the cost of doing business. And when I look at the surface of the deal, I'm looking at what's my acquisition cost, what is my cost of renovation, what is my percentage of return on those two numbers combined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the number's not that crazy. I mean, I'll strike between 13 to 15% and make it work. The
Yeah.
number starts getting below 10, it gets a little squirmy. But like that project you walked with me yesterday, I think that number was probably 10%. It's
Mm.
not a big number, but it's a easy, quick get in, get out kind of deal.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
you
when
saw
your
me,
electrician shows up about 3 minutes after you sign the deal, or as your pen is moving on the contract, your electrician is right over there, and then we will show up after that, and your landscaper is like, "Yeah, I could come over here today." They've already started landscaping. He's like, half your crew's already there, so it's really funny because So hopefully that one goes well for you. So, well, we're
yeah,
kind of running a little bit long on time, but we'll catch up on we've got several projects in the works. We'll be able to keep you guys updated, watch social media. Tavis is doing a good job of doing some kind of simple, about a $25,000 renovation at this place. So we're keeping a lot of the stuff, a lot of the design choices, keeping in place, making some simple changes with paint. It's not throwing a ton of money at this thing. It's trying to find value in what's there. So that'll be really cool to watch videos there. We'll talk about it here. If you have not, please like, subscribe, share this with a friend. We have definitely hit a little bit of an inflection point on our views and our listens recently, and we've got some YouTube videos that people have liked, and so that's cool. People are finding our YouTube channel a little bit, and we're going to continue to bring you some interviews. The old technology bug hit our last interview, and it chopped it up a little bit, so we're having to figure that out. Tavis's friend Ricardo is a really good interview. Unfortunately, only about 35 minutes of it came through. and we're going to have to figure that out. But that will be coming to you soon, so please pay attention to that. In the meantime, go back and listen to some of our other interviews. We've done several at this point. I'll have to count, probably 15 interviews or so. Really, really great personalities in the Dallas area. And then every week we come to you with this market update and news on Fridays, so pay attention to that too. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.